Welcome, folks, to River Management Society's River Management Roundtable. My name is Risa Shimoda. We have an amazing group of people here to talk about some history about water that is released on rivers, and you might not know about why it's releasing, why it shows up, and who is responsible for it. Um, we're still waiting for one of our speakers, so we're going to speak on their behalf if they don't show up, but we'll do the best we can with those who are here. So the first, if you're looking at the screen here, first person is Tom Christopher, and then Tom Christopher, he's one of the founding directors and secretary of New England Flow, the first organized coalition of recreational boating groups in the Northeast United States. He's recognized for his role in helping to develop the Deerfield River Settlement Agreement, a major environmental victory in New England. He was a signatory also to the Upper Androscoggin Settlement Agreement, which protects the Rapid and McGalloway rivers and 10 miles of river and lake shoreline in western Maine. He helped to secure a settlement agreement on the Kennebec River and also on the south branch of the Penobscot River that provide recreational boating flows, many miles of shoreline protection and fisheries improvements. And if you have been to the Northeast, and like Whitewater, those are some of the key rivers for sure. Robert Kauffman is also here. Robert is a professor emeritus from Frostburg State University. He has written books that cover risk management, swiftwater rescue, rafting, and canoeing, and he's on the ACA Board of Directors as treasurer. He's a former instructor, trainer, educator, and studied of paddling skills, and studied river fatalities on the main stem of the Potomac River for the Maryland DNR. Paul Fogal is the owner of Pocono Whitewater and Pocono Biking in Jimthorpe, Pennsylvania. Paul started whitewater guiding on the Youghiogheny and Ottawa rivers in 1975 and 1976. He and his brother started Pocono Whitewater on the Lehigh in 1977 and has been one of two main outfitters through this whole time period. Pocono Whitewater was in business on the Lehigh the prior to the formation of Lehigh Gorge State Park. He was involved in establishing the river operations plan that was used to transition to operating the park, actually. He worked with DCNR, Army Corps of Engineers, and the private boating community, Walter Dam renovations, which secured the current water release program. He has also owned and operated some other operations in West Virginia, New York, and Canada. And he has served on the board of the Delaware and Lehigh National Heritage Corridor. So he's been active for a very, very long time. David Brown is here also. David, in the early 80s, he headed the efforts to preserve recreational opportunities on the Ocoee and Gauley rivers. A book he has authored also called The Whitewater Wars, we'll plug that at the end, is a fast-paced true story of those political brawls as an emerging outdoor recreation industry carved a foothold in the mountains of Appalachia. He served as the ED of American Outdoors Association, the nation's leading outfitter trade organization, for 27 years. And then since he semi-retired, but not really, during the past 7 or 8 years, he's been a consultant to America Outdoors, Tennessee Paddle Sports Association, Chattahoochee River Whitewater Park, Virginia Paddle Sports Association, and the Lehigh Gorge Outfitters Association, and Pigeon River Association. Tom Waters we have a cast of thousands here. Tom Waters is the park manager for the Arkansas Headwaters Recreation Area, AHRA, with Colorado Parks and Wildlife in Salida, Colorado. Tom is a Denver native, CSU graduate, and he oversees the most visited river corridor in the state, managing everything from class 1 to 5 whitewater in Colorado's longest, which includes Colorado's longest gold medal fishery. An active boater and fly angler himself, he works, and plays in Salida, where he's dedicated to the stewardship of the water he enjoys. And then finally, we will hear from someone who is vacationing right now in Zion National Park, but has sent a recording, Jared Skaggs, who works with the Grand River Dam Authority and GRDA. He serves as a supervisor overseeing the Scenic Rivers Program and public access areas. He works he describes his work as the intersection of environmental stewardship, public service, and partnership building, collaborating with private landowners, tribal governments, local and state agencies. And he is going to tell you about a really cool Whitewater park that he manages also. So that is about the folks who are here. And I think we might have to be a little bit cut people kind of short, huh? If if they're not here personally, so we'll just see what we can do here. If you have been to roundtables before, we host them. Oops, can't see me very well. We host them on the second Tuesdays of the month. They vary usually from soup to nuts in terms of programming, but they're always about river managers or about the kind of workplace culture of the folks who are working on rivers. If you're not familiar with River Management Society, we're a membership organization, so we rely on our members, our volunteers. We have a volunteer board, and our members go from Fairbanks to Miami, so we're all across the country. And then the group here is not that large, so we might have, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. Certainly if you're having technical difficulties, but we might just have you later, raise your hand when we get to Q&A, and then we'll welcome all your questions. I hope you have some because this group of people is really kind of amazing and know an awful lot. So I'm going to first hand it to David Brown, who's there pictured a year or two ago, and he's gonna kick us off talking about these amazing rivers that you see. Go ahead, Dave.
Risa,
Thank you, Risa.
Can I interrupt 1 second? This is Paul, and I can't get on, so I'm going to have to do it over the phone.
Okay.
Thanks for telling
Can
us
you
that
hear
you're
me?
there. Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead and flip to the next slide. I started out in 1980 organizing the effort to save the Ocoee, and had worked for the federal government prior to that. And I'm going to start with this slide from the picture of the poster of the 1984 Golly River Festival that William Neely did to me, because 1984 was really a watershed year in the evolution of our relationship with water projects. Most of us in the 70s, or at least some of us, including me, were dam fighters in the 70s. And then when we suddenly showed up at these projects that were providing flows for recreation, we realized we needed to come up with a strategy to carve out some benefits for downstream recreation. And the first effort occurred on the Ocoee, which was in 1984. The first formal agreement for 116 days of water releases was signed between the state and TVA for those water releases. And it was also the year, in the fall of that year, that the Corps of Engineers first did the EIS to propose reliable releases from the Summersville Dam on the Golly River. So next slide. The Ocoee settlement in 1984, as I mentioned, was the first formal agreement to provide contractual agreement to provide flows for whitewater boating for a federal dam. And it wasn't the best because TVA insisted that they be reimbursed for lost power when water was released down the riverbed. It bypassed the turbines. So Congress appropriated $7.4 million for that for a 35-year contract, and which I thought would never expire, but it did, and had to be renewed. But one of the things that we learned during that battle was that TVA argued that because whitewater recreation, downstream recreation, wasn't a project purpose, that they had to be reimbursed for lost power. So when I got invited to go up to the Golly, that concept is the one we use to secure long-term releases on the Golly River. Go ahead and flip the next couple of slides. Um, the Golly releases were actually proposed in an appropriations bill in 1983. I'm not sure that really passed, but it inspired the Corps to come up with a plan in '84 to provide uh, reliable flows for downstream recreation. Both the Ocoee and Golly River issues were battles for a while until the agencies eventually saw the light. Go ahead and flip to the next slide. That's Iron Ring on the Golly, iconic rapid. Flip next slide. The other issue that came up during the Golly battle was that a private developer was proposing to put a FERC license project on the Summersville Dam, which of course we were concerned might threaten releases. So we began the process of trying to get some provisions in amendments to the Federal Power Act that provided for long-term consideration of other non-developmental uses of the project, such as downstream recreation and fish and wildlife. The first, I actually testified on that in '84. But the landmark legislation, the Electric Consumers Protection Act of 1986, passed 2 years later. Flip to the next slide. And it's been used very effectively by a number of organizations, some of whom are represented here, to get in intervening in the FERC licensing project to get releases for downstream recreation and, of course, fish and wildlife. It also requires mandatory consultation with state agencies, federal and state natural resource agencies, to address environmental impacts and to provide for those non-developmental uses. It requires equal consideration, protection, mitigation, and enhancement of fish and wildlife and recreational opportunities and environmental quality, not just energy production. So it's a very comprehensive and important piece of legislation which American Rivers and New England Flow and others have used throughout the years to achieve reliable water releases from FERC licensed projects. Next slide. That's the Golly River NRA, which is obviously one of the most beautiful stretches of river anywhere. And so we're so happy that it was preserved as a unit of the National Park System in 1988. And we have to thank Congressman Ray Hall from West Virginia for that. And next slide. And one of the other things I think that's missing here is the improvements, the project authorizations in the Water Resources Development Act of 1988. That may be on the next slide. But it authorized, no, I guess it got eliminated, but it authorized downstream recreation as project purposes of the Summersville Dam in West Virginia, the Lehigh Gorge Dam, Walters Dam on the Lehigh, and 9 other projects throughout the Mid-Atlantic region, which enabled further cooperation with those projects. And one of the things that is possible once that authorization is achieved, and probably even without it, is that existing project operations can be managed, enhance recreational uses while fulfilling the other project purposes. For example, when we first started working with the Corps on the Golly, they were running the fall water night and day during the fall drawdown. And so in dry years, they were still running the water at night, and that shortened the season. And it took quite a bit of work to get them to just run the water during the day. But that's one of the, and water transfers as well can be timed to benefit recreation, as I think some of our other speakers will show. This is the book that Risa referred to, which it's a funny and entertaining story about the battles for those 2 rivers back in the early '80s. That's all I have, Risa. Thanks so much.
Thanks, David. And the book is awesome, and I highly recommend it. It is really entertaining. Okay, we're moving on now. Tom Christopher, I see that you're on the phone. Can you chime in?
Uh,
Oh, there he is. Great.
all right, we're all set.
Okay.
All right. Welcome everybody, and thank you, David. The first slide here, if you take a look at the graphic on the left, that's a pretty good description of the number of dams that exist on the Deerfield River. It has often been called one of the hardest working rivers here in the United States. And one of the things that is not on the graphic is the first nuclear power plant in the United States was also part of this system. And they drew water out of the Deerfield uh, from Sherman Reservoir and discharged the warmer water year round. So it was quite enjoyable to be paddling on some sections of the Deerfield below their discharge uh, in
Mm.
January and February, those cold winter months. The slide on the right represents the 13 signatories to the Deerfield Settlement Agreement. And it's a great photograph of everybody smiling and enjoying the fact that we were able to finally come together. But it clearly did not start out that way. When a small group of kayakers discovered that the uh, Deerfield dams were coming up for relicensing, we actually went to the power company and asked politely if they could release water 5 or 6 times during the summer months so we could enjoy the ability to recreate on the river. And essentially they said, hey, this is our dam, our river, our water, our land. If you want water for kayaking, you need to petition for it to build your own dam on the west branch of the Deerfield, which doesn't have any dams. So that set up a very confrontational situation from day one. And a dozen kayakers got together and they decided to challenge the license. When that happened, a number of other stakeholder groups, particularly uh, fishermen and some nonprofits that were interested in riverside protection came in as stakeholders. And for a long, long time, it was, well, for 4 or 5 years, it was very confrontational. The state of Massachusetts had not done a SCORP, a state comprehensive recreation plan in many, many years. So we had to go through that process. And again, as we went through meetings and meetings and meetings over the course of 4 or 5 years, we finally got to the point where we came up with a settlement agreement. This slide here is a picture that I took last summer. These are kayakers lining up at the Monroe Bridge section of the Deerfield River. It's very, very popular and has a class 4 whitewater in it. And that this is just a small indication of the number of people who now use the river. On any given weekend summer day, you can easily find 1,000 river users having a great time, kayakers, paddlers, tubers, and this has had an enormous impact on the economic activity of the region. You can do the next slide, Risa. This is an indication of the commercial outfitters lining their passengers or getting their passengers loaded onto their rafts. And you can see that nice set of stairs coming down that are reasonably comfortable for access to the river. Back in the day, there were no stairs there. this was one of the improvements that we got through the settlement agreement. And back in the old days, this was nothing there but riprap that was, boulders that were 4 to 6 feet in diameter stacked up, and we would balance our kayaks on a boulder and then drop into the river. And what was really important about the Deerfield settlement is that for the first time, we actually got elements of the settlement agreement put into the FERC license. And at the same time we were working on the Deerfield, we had several other relicensings ongoing in the state of Maine. And with the success of the Deerfield in our back pocket, as we proceeded through the number of dams up in Maine, we kept adding additional enhancements that ultimately, because of the settlement agreements in Maine, also became part of the FERC license. Throughout this process, there's no question that throughout the confrontation of individual stakeholders groups, a great deal more information was needed if we were ever going to come to settlement. So that introduced a much higher level of science and economics into the process. And that was something that we've seen as relicensing has continued to move across the United States, as development of the United States and hydropower of the United States swept across our country as a simple matter of history. One of the interesting components of the Deerfield Settlement Agreement, in one of the stretches of the Deerfield River, we found an endangered species, the tubercled orchid. And rather than destroy that particular species when we were actually adding more water to the river, it only existed because there was no water in the river.
Mhm.
We were able to work with the Department of Environmental Resources in Vermont and have the power company actually transplant every single orchid in that driveway, so that gave them an opportunity to continue the existence of that species in the state of Vermont. Overall,
I'm gonna thank you,
that's fine.
Tom. Thank you so much for telling us that unbelievable story that was the beginning of many, many other successful settlements. And
Oh,
I think,
this last
yes.
slide is
Mhm.
below Fife Brook, and that shows this was taken 10 years ago in 2015, and that gives you an idea of traffic on the Deerfield,
Mhm.
lower section of the Deerfield River.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, we're moving a little south. So Paul, I don't know if you were able to get on screen or you're just by phone. Either is good. Um, Maybe not. Maybe he had a little bit of difficulty. So if Paul is not here, I'm gonna maybe ask maybe David and Robert to tag team just the story of the Lehigh because it's also interesting and a little bit different from relicensing.
Lisa, Paul is here.
I know, but we can't hear him.
No, okay.
You,
Robert, why don't you go ahead since you had experience with that?
Hmm.
okay. You want to go to the next slide on the dam? I believe the
Yes.
next slide is the dam.
Well, let's see. These are a couple of
Okay, these are
classic trips on the Lehigh. There
on
we
the
go.
Lehigh.
Hmm.
Yeah, the Lehigh River is the scenic gorge is roughly about 36 miles in length. It's a scenic river under the Pennsylvania Wild and Scenic River System, and it's in a urbanized area. It is a very remote location, and so it's a beautiful resource. The Francis Walter Dam was built. I don't know when it was built, but it was in reference to Hurricane Hazel, which went through the northeast Pennsylvania in 1954. And the primary purpose of the Francis Walter Dam was for flood control. And as a result, the management philosophy of the Francis Walter Dam was to uh, basically maintain a low reservoir, a low water reservoir, in contrast to, let's say, a hydroelectric dam or other use dams. And the management policy was basically flow in equals flow out. And somewhere along the line, the uh, they started releases. The problem with the releases is that if you look very closely, you'll see there's a road that goes right across the lower part of the dam, and that road would be flooded if they raised the water level. And when they raised the water level, that impeded the traffic. So the main problem they had was to relocate the road above the dam, which eventually they did, which allowed for uh, a a steady source of releases, and which related to the economic development of really the rafting industry and uh, in the Lehigh corridor. So it uh, did you want to add anything, Dave?
No, I think that's a good description. I think it was the moving the road to the top of the dam increased the storage capacity. And I do believe the water now, I mean, they use the water to also dilute pollution down in the Philadelphia area. Um, so the releases also are kind of enhance that uh, low flow augmentation for the lower portions of the Delaware.
Mhm.
Risa, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. You want to
Okay.
add something, Paul?
Well,
Please.
yeah, I give my percent, my outlook on it. So I've been operating Pocono Whitewater on the Lehigh since 1977, and we operate within the Lehigh Gorge State Park, which set up with our input a river management plan on trip size, number of trips, and put in times per day. This was done in the early 80s. We originally operated on the spring and fall schedule at the mercy of rainfall and fluctuating river levels. And there is, as Robert was talking about, the Francis Walters Dam upstream. And when we realized how David got things operating on the Ecoe and the Gali and stuff, we approached the Army Corps of Engineers in the state park about getting releases from our dam also. And to make things short, with support from the private boating community, the fishing community, state parks, and the Army Corps itself, and most important, our federal rep, who secured the funding to put the road across the top, which which Robert just talked about. We were able to get the modifications, and we were able to secure downstream recreation as a project purpose of the dam. Um,
Great, thank
the-
you. And
the-
Robert, we've been staring at this canoeist conclusion graph, so you must explain what that is now.
My contribution or my story, and I'm sure that that you want me to move quickly through this because of time constraints. Uh, but my story really indicates that we're fighting over the resource, or you have multiple use of the resource, and oftentimes there are conflicts between river users and the desire for uh, to perpetuate their activity. And uh, the Rod and Gun Club purchased a Rockport is the one of the major takeouts for the upper portion of the Lehigh. In fact, other than Drake's Creek, is the only really good takeout. And the Rod and Gun Club purchased the right of way of the railroad, and then proceeded to uh, prevent canoeists and boaters and rafters from using that exit. And as part of they had a hearing involving the closure, and at that hearing we heard rumors, or they were inviting the state biologist to come in and who had done a study on benthic flow and the harm of water releases on fishing. And so we scurried very quickly to research everything on dams, water releases, and fishing. And I should note that this was back in the 70s before the internet. So that meant calling experts on the phone, going to the library, and doing today probably what you could do in a half an hour. Anyway, uh, the the state biologist very quickly did a very simple experiment, and you can see that on the graph, which was uh, he went in 100 yards below the dam for a release, measured the benthic population before and after the release, and as you would expect, there was a decrease in the benthic population. He came back 2 weeks later, did the same study, and again had the same results. Came into the meeting, noted that gave his results. And of course, we asked the infamous question. I said, well, did you note that there was an increase in benthic flow from the first trial to the second trial, which indicates your hypothesis that fishing is harmed by the water releases is just the opposite, that you have an increase in benthic population. And needless to say, the wildlife biologist left was couldn't get out of that meeting quick enough. The bottom line, or the moral of the story, is that we live in an age of information and information driven. And I know Dave Brown was talking, they had the same problem with fishing versus the boaters on the North Branch of the Potomac when they were working on that. So it's not an uncommon problem, and that we continually need to dot our I's, cross our T's, and have good research methods, because the research can be used for and against our outcomes. So
Well, thanks,
that's my
Robert.
story.
Yeah, Paul, you want to add anything else before we go on from?
I, I would just say that the releases have been transformational and turned what were successful but small, very seasonal outfitting businesses into larger major economic boosts for the local economy. It certainly fluctuates year to year, but on average, about 130,000 people go commercial rafting per year. And I do not know the private boating numbers, but it is also significant. I also do not have figures, but these river runners spend money on local lodging, restaurants, etc.
Mhm.
It has been a good program, and the Army Corps has been a very reliable and helpful partner. The actual program works at the moment by storing water in the early spring and March through April, and then supplementing natural flows on the weekend release dates, and enough natural flow to augment those releases. And as the paddling community and private and commercial has gotten used to the release levels, the Corps has sometimes actually cut back on the flows so boaters are not surprised by abnormally high levels.
Mhm.
And overall, it's been a very successful program with state, federal, business, and private individuals working together.
Mhm. Great, thank you. Thanks so much, you guys. Okay, now we're going west. We're heading west, and we have Tom Waters from AHRA.
Great. Thank you, Risa. Yeah, I'm Tom Waters. I'm based in Salida, Colorado, work at the Arkansas Headwaters Recreation Area, and I'm here to discuss the Voluntary Flow Management Program, or the VFMP. This program is a cornerstone of how we balance the health of the Arkansas River with those who use it. You can go to the next slide, please. All right, to give you some context, the AHRA is defined by Colorado statute, and it starts at the confluence of the Lake Fork and East Fork near Leadville, and then goes all the way to Lake Pueblo. Covers about 152 river miles. As you can see from these slides here, our team doesn't just manage the paperwork, but we're actually active on the water as well, doing river patrols and hazard removal. And it's a real community-driven effort here. That's what keeps us going. The other thing that Risa mentioned in the beginning is that we are also the longest stretch of gold medal water in the state at 102 miles. And what that means is we have a fish density of 60 pounds per trout per acre and 12 quality trout, which is 14 inches or greater in that same acre unit of measure. All right, you can go to the next slide, Risa. When we talk about the VFMP, in the agreement, we use the Wellsville gauge as our North Star. As you can see in this graphic, this is where we measure both fishing and recreational flows. Between July 1st and August 15th, our target flow is generally 700 CFS. And the rest of the year, we're aiming to keep the river between 250 and 400 CFS or cubic feet per second to help with the spawning conditions for the rainbow and the brown trout. It's important to remember, though, that the river is a dynamic system, and flows above and below this gauge are subject to all sorts of things, including weather, diversions, and irrigation. And so we can definitely see those impacts in the main stem from those influences. You can go to the next slide, please, Risa. All right, this slide's a little busy, and Risa told me that I should give you a warning to just stick with me. I'll break it down a little bit here. There's five official signatories on the agreement, and that's Southeastern Colorado Water Conservancy District, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, Chaffee County, Arkansas River Outfitters Association, and Trout Unlimited. While the program operates year-round, these recreational flows, or those flows between July 1st and August 15th, get the most attention, especially in years like this one. Just to note, the water for the releases are held up near Leadville in Twin Lakes and Turquoise Reservoir. And under this agreement, up to 10,000 acre feet are made available to supplement the river when possible. To put that in perspective, one CFS or 1 cubic foot per second is 2 acre feet per day. So depending upon how dry we are, we can chew through that 10,000 acre feet pretty quickly. The other thing I wanted to put in here is the non-signatories, and they contribute a lot. So Pueblo Water, Colorado Springs, Aurora, Bureau of Rec, and DWR, as well as the Upper Ark, all help us by running their operations in a way that benefits the river and the time of year. So that can mean additional flow when we need it, and it can also mean exchanging water upstream to help with the spawn or to prevent us going into high water advisories. Go to the next slide. So here's some examples of the implementation. So this is 2005. Bureau of Reclamation, or BOR, released about 6,700 acre feet to supplement the recreational flows from July 1st to August 15th. You can go to the next slide, Risa. So 2011, you can see on the graph there, we had a huge snowpack, and it still required some augmentation or supplement. And so we didn't use quite as much water that year. You can go to the next one. So 2012, when we look at this, this is kind of potentially where we're at this year here as well. This water year, 2026, could actually be leaner than 2012 or 2002, which are the ones that everybody points back to. And that year, 2012, you can see that only 5,000 acre feet of water were made available for that supplement from July 1st to August 15th. And so this year, with the current conditions, we're not quite sure what we're going to come up with, but it could be worse than 2012. Go to the next slide. I wanted to include this slide as a little bit of optimism. Weather has a way of surprising us And there's a lot of talk about El Nino, and so fingers crossed on that one.
Mhm.
You can go to the next slide, Risa. So just wrapping it up, river recreation here generates about $43 million in annual economic output within the region. And so the success of that economic output is directly related to the voluntary flow management program. This year, our imports from the Fry Arc project, which is Trans Mountain Diversion Water, is only sitting at 55 acre feet. So we're in a drought in the whole state. So on an average year, it's anywhere from 45,000 to 60,000 acre feet that they import. This year, we have 55. So hopefully that Super El Nino delivers. But despite the challenges, the group still meets constantly, signatories and non-signatories. We had a meeting this morning, and it's really what keeps this program going is the transparency and the communication that we use to do it. That's all I've got. Thanks for your attention. Thanks for letting me present, Risa.
Sure, my pleasure. Okay, so we have a final speaker who's not here, but prepared because he knew he would be away. So I'm going to just go through a few slides, and this is we're now kind of moving back east a little bit to northwestern Arkansas and eastern Oklahoma. Let's see if this works here.
Hey there, my name is Jared Skaggs, and I work for Grand River Dam Authority in the state of Oklahoma. And I have pre-recorded this message because we are currently in Zion National Park, and I wasn't sure if I would have service to jump on this call. With that said, I'd like to thank the other presenters. Sure, they've done a wonderful job, and also a special thank you to everyone who's participating in today's roundtable. So to get started, as we know, rivers don't just turn on. They flow in response to rainfall, watershed conditions, storage, and competing demands. What we're really talking about with this topic is management, how water is timed, how it's allocated and shared. I'll ground that idea in a specific example. It's the transformation of the old Lake Francis Dam in Watts, Oklahoma, into Whitewater Park, and what it tells us about recreational river releases and modern flow systems. The Lake Francis Dam was built in 1931, and originally, when it created, was a 70-acre recreational lake. Very much a hold water back and stabilize it type of model. It was built in Oklahoma for oil executives as a private retreat. The resort had a hotel, a dance hall, cabins, swimming pool, restaurant, tennis, and golf courses. In 1954, Siloam Springs, Arkansas purchased Lake Francis in Oklahoma to establish a water source and recreation area after repairing the dam from 2 failures. This is a pump station to supply their city water. By 1990, that system had already had multiple failures again. The lake was drained due to structural concerns, leaving behind a constrained river and aging infrastructure. For decades, the site sat in limbo. It wasn't functioning as a lake, but it wasn't a restored river either. The shift came when partners asked a different question. It really circled around, what if we stopped trying to control the river as a static system and instead worked with the flow? So with that vision, supported with the Walton Family Foundation, it helped move the project from the idea to the reality it is today. Their investment, which funded the vast majority of the project to the tune of about $35 million, wasn't just building a park, it was rethinking how the community would connect to rivers across this region. That idea eventually became Whitewater Park. Woka is a 1,200-foot engineered side channel off of the Illinois River, designed with a series of 8 drops that create controlled whitewater features. It's used for kayaking, river tubing, river surfing, competition and training, swiftwater rescue training for emergency first responders. Today, what was once a failed dam site is now a multi-use river corridor, and it serves recreation, safety training, and water supply for Siloam Springs. It also improves the river itself. With the old dam no longer functioning as a barrier in the same way, and with the re-engineered channel, fish now have improved downstream passage through this reach of the Illinois River. It reconnects habitat that had been partially fragmented for decades. I would argue, though, it's not just a park, it's a managed diversion system in the river. The water is routed off of the main river, shaped through the Whitewater channel, and returned downstream. That routing is controlled through adjustable gates that raise and lower on large air bladders and metal panels, and can be adjusted to change the flow or create different wave shapes. We have a memorandum of understanding with the city of Siloam Springs, Arkansas, that if drought conditions drop the water levels to a point too low for them to pump, we will raise the flow gates completely, which closes off the Whitewater channel and therefore increases the height of the dam pool, maintaining their ability to pump the water for their city. But because the water is doing multiple jobs, it's contributing to the municipal water supply, it's maintaining river continuity for the habitat, it's enabling recreation. It really does have the possibility to be similar to what happens with scheduled dam releases. What's different here is that recreation was designed into the system from the very beginning. So it required collaboration with public agencies like GRDA, Grand River Dam Authority, which owns and operates the park, local governments in Oklahoma and Arkansas, philanthropic leadership from the Walton Family Foundation, engineers, river designers, the Cherokee Nation. Together, we all created a system where flow can be adjusted, water supply can be protected, and public access is now being expanded in this area. So it's similar to balancing a release schedule. It's just implemented in a different way, where whitewater recreation is available almost every day of the year. It also, WOCA also shows why communities invest in these systems. It's been drawing visitors to a very poor part of Oklahoma. It supports local businesses. It contributes to outdoor recreation economy. It functions as access infrastructure. It makes the river usable for more people, more safely and more consistently. During the construction, we also safened the dam, stair-stepping it. So instead of being a low head dam, it now has a cascade effect. By adding uses like training and education and competition, it extends the value beyond just weekend recreation. So when we're asking why a river turns on, we're really asking how water is managed and shared. And with WOCA and Lake Francis Dam, the recreation is integrated and it's not incidental. The infrastructure supports multiple outcomes at once, and it shifts from a static water system to an adaptive one. I'm not sure where the slides are, but you can see in the slide deck presentation some old pictures from when the dam was still a recreational lake, and then also some of the construction and where we sit currently with the Whitewater Park. So I appreciate your time, and I wish I could be there in person to interact with this group and answer any questions. Hopefully, Risa and Becca can share my email if there's any follow-up. And I just really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jared. He will not be able to answer your questions, but the other folks here can. I don't know if there are in the chat.
We do. We have three questions from David Brown, from Matthew Terry. The first one is to David Brown. What conditions allowed for the breakthrough for consideration of recreational releases from hydropower projects?
Well, I think just the emergence of the sport was one of the primary factors, and in many cases, when you were battling very powerful agencies like TVA and to some extent the Corps of Engineers, especially in a situation like the Ocoee, you needed significant economic benefits. And that's not always necessary, but for extended releases, excuse me, such as we have on the Ocoee and some of the other resources, the economic benefits are a significant help.
All right. The second question is to anybody that wants to answer. Who provided the technical assistance for modeling flow management for hydro project operations? Did the hydro project operators help in any way?
I can probably speak to that to some extent. When we were working on the Deerfield, uh, that was not the case. But as we continued to have success up in Maine and then coming back to Massachusetts on some other projects, such as the Connecticut, uh, the flow modeling just had to be completed, not only completed, but also explained in a manner that was understood. And for the most part, this was always conducted by the hydropower operators. I would certainly give the Commonwealth of Massachusetts a real pat on the back for backing up a lot of the questions that were asked that needed answers, and certainly with their authority behind not only the boating stakeholders but a number of other stakeholders, it was very possible to have the the uh, the state the proponent of the projects uh, be responsible for providing this work. And and it's very fair to say that if a question is asked, it has to be answered. And that was something that uh, really sort of may have started out in a nascent form as such, but as we continued to do work in relicensing here in New England, it we just got better at doing what we were doing. And I think today, when you have any kind of project, whether it's a core project or if it's a hydro project, there's certain criteria and certain things that have to be modeled and questions that have to be answered. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, I could add something to that too.
Mhm.
On the Golly, we had a scientist, basically Steve Taylor, who uh,
Enough, Steve.
who who provided the hydrology and demonstrated that the operations that we were proposing had already been uh, done by the Corps. So it was made it very feasible to propose those releases, both legislatively and to demonstrate to the Corps they were possible. But sometimes hydrologists, an independent hydrologist, is a very important participant if you're proposing something that's not hasn't already been uh, done.
Yeah, I'll just chime in one more component is that when if the river's been dry for a really long time, so you're sort of starting from scratch, usually everyone starts with a natural hydrograph. Like this is what the river would be doing if it were just normal, like 70 years ago. And from there, power company wants to not release a lot of water because they're losing money. Boaters want a certain level they think is fun, enjoyable, maybe challenging, and there might be critters whose like minimum flow might be another consideration. There might be anglers who want to have just a little bit of water all the time. So you have a lot of input on what should be released through the license. And so you end up with something in between. And if you hear of a control flow study, that's usually with paddlers who are testing, again, when you're starting from scratch, like a high level, medium level, low level, and then hopefully the chosen level, or sometimes it's two, like on the Tallulah, you have a lower level on Saturday and a higher level on Sunday, or the other way around. You're able to kind of accommodate different type paddlers, maybe tubers one day and hard shell kayakers another day. So it's definitely a process. And I think Matt, you had one more question, huh?
Yes, for
For
Tom
Tom.
Waters. Yeah.
Hmm.
Who was responsible for bringing all the VFMP groups together at the table?
Yeah, good question. My understanding is the governor at the time, who was Roy Romer, was very supportive of it. And there happened to be a representative also who was from Leadville and was well known to the the outfitters, the original outfitters that were here. And so it was really kind of just fortuitous that all that kind of lined up at that time and they knew each other. And that's really who got everybody to the table. And then obviously the signatories that are on there now were involved at the time as well.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Tom Jr. As as we're wrapping up here, we have a few upcoming events. If you get the emails, you'll hear about these also. Big Alaska chapter trip. If you happen to be in Anchorage this Saturday, there's a cleanup up there. A couple of other river management roundtables. On June 16th, the Wave Masters from the Boise Whitewater Park and Bend Whitewater Park are going to tell us how they do their work. We're doing a chapter trip on the Deerfield to celebrate the relicensed license, which is exciting. And then on the 14th of July, we're going to talk about who takes care of safety, dam awareness, law enforcement, and rescue on different rivers because it differs by river. We have a YouTube channel. If you go to our website, you can see we have over 300 videos up there on a variety of topics. And we have, before you leave, it'd be awesome if you could fill out this River Management Roundtable survey, because it'll help us learn how you like today and how we can do better. So with that, I think I'm just gonna thank everybody. Thank you, Tom and David and Tom and Paul, if you're still here, and Robert and James for doing all the back and stuff that made this happen, helped us make it happen. So thanks everyone. Matthew, another question? Go for it.
Well, just following up on the earlier question, with the Golly and the Russell Fork that have reservoirs upstream that have reservoir users, properties, landowners with docks and fishing and stuff. How did it go with managing and considering those groups, which I understand in some situations have been a little problematic when addressing the downstream recreational river uses?
Well, the Golly, I can answer the Golly. The Golly releases were just managing the fall drawdown to winter pool. And so that was a normal operation that began after Labor Day. So, that was kind of a standard practice that had been there because it was a flood control project, had been there since the dam had been built. And the lake recreation, of course, is usually in the summer months. But I would say their concerns pretty much prevented any kind of consideration for summertime releases. It's possible, for example, to manage a foot of storage to provide some releases on occasionally in the summer, but those have never occurred for that reason. And nobody's really pushed for it too much. I'm not sure about the Russell Fork. I have done that river years ago, but I don't think the Russell Fork releases are very frequent. So probably
Yeah,
not a big issue.
it wasn't the core. There was redefining the project purpose for the core. It wasn't a recreational dam, so it ran when they felt like it. And there's only a few weekends a year, so it wasn't as much water. You're right, but we had to prove. Same guy, Steve Taylor, had to prove that we weren't decimating any frog or critter species because they weren't flushed away because of a couple of releases. Kind of similar story to what you've heard in the past. And once he did some research and showed the data, they agreed to add recreation as a project purpose. So now it runs in October, still runs in October.
And the burden of proof on not harming amphibians and fish is on who?
It's not so much a burden of proof, but they were there before the releases and they were there happily after the releases.
And normally when the Corps, as any major federal action, has to comply with NEPA. So more than likely, I'm not familiar with the NEPA study for the Russell Fork, but on the Golly, For example, the Corps did a full EIS on the release schedules for the fall drawdown. So my guess is that those issues were considered during the EIS process.
Mhm. Plus, on the Russell Fork, people they were letting the water out, and kayakers were going. It just wasn't on a schedule. So the only people who could paddle it were those who lived within an hour or so. Um,
Was that
similar to
were
your
were
thought.
they just managing the fall drawdown, Risa, for
Hmm.
the Russell Fork?
Yeah, and
So like it was a common operation. They were just scheduling it so that it was convenient for usable by paddlers.
right on the weekends instead of some
Yeah,
random time during the week.
and
Yeah,
at night,
exactly. Yes,
probably.
yes, right. Well, thanks everybody. I'm going to stop our recording, but thank you for being here.
Take care, people.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Great
Thanks
to hear you,
everybody.
Julie.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Paul.